Most people believe that peace comes from control. If they can just organize their life better, if they can manage their emotions more effectively, if they can eliminate uncertainty, mistakes, and discomfort, then, finally, they will be calm. But ancient wisdom tells a very different story. Both Stoicism and Buddhist philosophy, though separated by culture and geography, point to the same insight. Suffering is not created by life itself, but by our resistance to life as it is. This video is not about becoming passive. It is not about giving up, lowering standards, or accepting injustice. It is about something far more subtle and far more powerful: the art of non-resistance. 1. The hidden mechanism of suffering. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. Most of the pain you experience is self-generated. Not because you are weak, not because you think too much, but because your mind is constantly fighting reality. Think about it. A plan changes. A message doesn't arrive. Someone behaves in a way you didn't expect. You make a mistake. The event itself is often small, but what happens next? Your mind says, "This shouldn't be happening. This is unfair. I shouldn't feel like this. Why does this always happen to me?" At that moment, something critical occurs. You are no longer dealing with the situation. You are dealing with your resistance to it. And resistance always has a cost. 2. Why resistance feels necessary. Resistance feels natural. In fact, it feels responsible. From a young age, we are taught that control equals strength, that accepting something means agreeing with it, that not fighting means losing. So the mind develops a habit. When something feels unpleasant, it pushes back. Mentally, emotionally, internally. But here's the paradox. The harder you resist what already exists, the more power you give it over your inner world. Resistance does not remove discomfort. It prolongs it. It turns temporary situations into ongoing psychological battles. 3. The Buddhist insight, the second arrow. In Buddhist teachings, there is a powerful metaphor known as the two arrows. The first arrow is the event itself, painful, unexpected, or uncomfortable. The second arrow is your reaction to it. The first arrow may be unavoidable. The second arrow is optional. Yet most people spend their lives firing the second arrow repeatedly. They replay conversations. They argue with the past. They imagine different outcomes. They criticize themselves for feeling what they feel. The suffering doesn't come from what happened. It comes from not accepting that it happened. 4. Stoicism and the principle of acceptance. Now let's turn to Stoicism. The Stoics were not passive thinkers. They were generals, emperors, teachers, and leaders. They understood action. But they also understood something most people miss. There is a clear boundary between what you control and what you do not. Suffering begins when you ignore that boundary. Weather, other people's opinions, the past, random events. These are not yours to command. Yet the mind constantly tries, and every failed attempt creates frustration. Acceptance in Stoicism does not mean liking what happens. It means recognizing reality clearly, without distortion. 5. Why acceptance is not weakness. Many people fear acceptance because they confuse it with surrender. They imagine that if they stop resisting, they will stop caring. They will lose motivation. They will become passive observers of their own life. This fear is understandable, but incorrect. Acceptance is not the end of action. It is the end of inner conflict. When the mind stops fighting reality, clarity emerges. And clarity is what allows effective action. 6. What happens when you stop resisting? When resistance drops, even slightly, several things happen naturally. The body relaxes. The breath deepens. The mind becomes quieter. Not because life suddenly improves, but because the internal war has ended. You are no longer trying to rewrite the present moment. You are finally meeting it. And from that meeting, something unexpected arises. Choice. Not reaction, not impulse, but conscious response. 7. A simple moment of practice. Let's pause here for a brief exercise. You don't need to change anything. Just notice. Where is your body tense right now? Your shoulders? Your jaw? Your breath? Without fixing it, simply acknowledge it. Then silently say, I am allowing this moment to be as it is. Nothing dramatic may happen, but something subtle shifts. And subtle shifts are where real transformation begins. What comes next? In the next part, we will explore Marcus Aurelius and the Stoic practice of acceptance. Why resistance often disguises itself as ambition. How non-resistance creates inner stability without passivity. There is a reason the writings of ancient Stoics still feel unsettlingly relevant today. They were not written for comfort. They were written for clarity. Among them, Marcus Aurelius stands out, not as a philosopher by profession, but as a man burdened with immense responsibility. An emperor, a commander, a human being facing illness, betrayal, loss, and constant pressure. And yet, his private writings, never meant for publication, return again and again to a single idea. Peace comes from accepting what is and aligning yourself with it, rather than opposing it. 1. Acceptance as a strategic advantage. Marcus Aurelius did not preach acceptance because life was easy. He wrote about it because life was difficult. Plagues, wars, political instability, personal suffering. Acceptance for him was not spiritual decoration. It was psychological survival. He understood something most people resist admitting. Reality does not negotiate. You can argue with it internally. You can resent it. You can wish it were different. But none of that changes what already exists. What it does change is you. 2. The illusion of control. Modern culture glorifies control. Control your mindset, control your habits, control your future, control your emotions. But Marcus Aurelius makes a sharp distinction. Some things are within your control. Most things are not. And confusion between the two is the root of suffering. When you try to control what cannot be controlled, 3 things happen. Anxiety increases, energy is wasted, frustration becomes chronic. Acceptance is not resignation. It is accurate perception. It is seeing the boundary clearly and respecting it. 3. This is what nature has given you. One of the most radical Stoic ideas is this: whatever has happened is part of the larger order of things. This does not mean everything is good, it means everything exists. And fighting existence itself is a losing battle. Marcus Aurelius reminds himself, this is what nature has given you. Work with it, not against it. Notice the phrasing, not enjoy it, not approve of it. Work with it. That is non-resistance in action. 4. Why resistance disguises itself as strength. Resistance often pretends to be something noble. It wears many masks. High standards, ambition, discipline, self-criticism. But underneath, resistance often says, I refuse to accept this version of reality. And that refusal quietly drains you. You can be disciplined without being hostile to the present. You can be ambitious without resenting where you are now. The Stoics understood this balance deeply. 5. The inner posture matters more than the outcome. One of the most overlooked Stoic insights is this: your inner posture toward events matters more than the events themselves. Two people can face the same situation. One collapses inwardly, the other remains stable. The difference is not toughness, it is resistance level. The less you resist internally, the more flexible you become externally. 6. Non-resistance is not indifference. This point must be clear. Non-resistance does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop fighting reality emotionally. You still act, you still set boundaries, you still make decisions, but you do so without inner warfare. This is why Stoicism pairs acceptance with responsibility. Accept what is, respond wisely. 7. The silent shift that changes everything. There is a moment, subtle but profound, when resistance drops. The moment when the mind stops saying, "This shouldn't be happening," and instead says, "This is happening. Now what?" That shift changes everything. Suddenly, energy returns, attention sharpens, emotion stabilizes. Not because life improved, but because your relationship to it did. 8. A Stoic reflection you can use today. Here is a simple Stoic reflection adapted for modern life. When something frustrates you today, pause and ask, is this within my control? If not, am I willing to stop fighting it internally? What action remains once resistance is gone? You may notice something surprising. Often, the best action only becomes visible after resistance fades. What comes next? In the next part, we will move from philosophy into practice. The morning ritual of non-resistance. How to train acceptance without becoming passive. Why mornings shape your entire mental posture for the day. If non-resistance were only a philosophical idea, it would remain abstract, interesting, comforting, and ultimately useless. The ancient traditions understood this clearly. That's why acceptance was never meant to stay in theory. It was meant to be trained. And the most important training ground is not during crisis, but at the beginning of the day. 1. Why the morning matters more than you think. Your mind does not start fresh each morning. It resumes. It resumes habits. It resumes narratives. It resumes resistance. The first few minutes after waking are critical because your mental defenses are low. Your identity is still soft. Your attention has not yet been hijacked. Whatever posture you adopt in the morning becomes the default tone of the day. Most people unknowingly begin their day like this: checking the phone, reviewing problems, anticipating stress, mentally preparing for battle. Without realizing it, they enter resistance mode before life even begins. 2. Resistance as a morning reflex. Pay attention to the subtle resistance that appears early in the day. I don't want to get up. I shouldn't feel tired. Today is going to be difficult. I already feel behind. None of these thoughts solve anything. They simply create tension before action even starts. The Stoics and Buddhists approached mornings differently. They did not ask, "How can I control today?" They asked, "How can I meet today without inner conflict?" 3. The core principle of the morning ritual. The goal of a non-resistance morning practice is not positivity. It is alignment. Alignment with what already exists. Your energy level, your mood, the conditions of the day. Instead of demanding that reality match your expectations, you adjust your expectations to reality. This single shift conserves enormous mental energy. 4. The non-resistance morning ritual. Simple and realistic. This is not a long routine. It is not spiritual theater. It takes only a few minutes. Step 1. Pause before doing. Before reaching for your phone, before standing up, pause for a moment. Notice the body. No judgment, no fixing, just awareness. This alone interrupts automatic resistance. Step 2. Name what is present. Silently acknowledge what you notice. Tiredness is here. Resistance is here. Calm is here. Restlessness is here. You are not trying to change these states. You are removing opposition to them. This is crucial. What you allow loses its grip. Step 3. Remove the inner argument. Notice any sentence that starts with, "I shouldn't," "I must," "This has to be." These are signs of resistance. Gently replace them with, "This is how it is right now." Not as resignation, but as clarity. Step 4. Set an intention of cooperation. This is the heart of the practice. Say internally, "Today I will work with reality, not against it." This does not mean you won't act. It means you won't waste energy fighting what already exists. 5. Why this works psychologically. Resistance consumes attention. When you stop resisting, attention becomes available. Available for thinking clearly. Available for creativity. Available for precise action. Instead of dragging the day behind you, you move with it. This is why ancient practices often look simple. Their power is not in complexity, but in accuracy. 6. Common misunderstanding. I'll become passive. This fear appears often. If I stop resisting, won't I lose my edge? The opposite is true. Resistance creates friction. Friction creates exhaustion. Exhaustion destroys effectiveness. Non-resistance creates clean energy. Energy that can be directed intentionally instead of being burned internally. 7. A day lived without constant opposition. Imagine a day where you don't argue with traffic. You don't mentally fight delays. You don't attack yourself for feeling low. You don't resist the emotional weather. Nothing extraordinary changes externally. But internally, everything feels lighter. This is not indifference. It is cooperation with existence. 8. A quiet truth most people miss. Here is a subtle but profound realization. Life is already happening without your approval. Resistance is the attempt to negotiate with what has already arrived. Non-resistance is the decision to stop negotiating and start participating. What comes next? In the next part, we'll go even deeper. What cooperating with existence truly means. Why resistance creates the illusion of identity. How non-resistance dissolves overthinking at its root. At some point, acceptance deepens into something more radical. Not just tolerating reality, not just enduring it, but cooperating with it. This is where both Stoicism and Buddhism quietly converge. Not in ideas, but in orientation. 1. The subtle shift from endurance to cooperation. Most people think acceptance means putting up with life. They imagine gritting their teeth and saying, "Fine, this is how it is." But that is still resistance, just disguised. True non-resistance feels different. It feels like this. This is the condition I've been given. How does life want to move from here? This question changes everything. You are no longer standing against reality. You are standing with it. 2. Why reality is not your enemy. The mind is trained to see obstacles everywhere. Delays are enemies. Emotions are enemies. Uncertainty is an enemy. But ancient philosophy asks a dangerous question. What if reality is not hostile? What if it is neutral, and your resistance is what turns it into a battlefield? When you stop labeling experience as wrong, you stop leaking energy into internal conflict. 3. Resistance creates a false sense of identity. Here is something most people never notice. A large part of the ego is built from resistance. I am the one who fights. I am the one who struggles. I am the one who never accepts less. Remove resistance, and identity begins to soften. This is unsettling, because many people don't know who they are without tension. But this is exactly where freedom begins. 4. The Buddhist view. Flow instead of force. In Buddhism, suffering arises from clinging and aversion. Wanting reality to stay. Wanting reality to go away. Both are forms of resistance. Non-resistance is neither attachment nor rejection. It is presence without demand. When you stop forcing experience to conform, experience begins to move naturally. Not always comfortably, but honestly. 5. Overthinking as a resistance strategy. Overthinking is not intelligence. It is resistance trying to regain control. The mind loops because it refuses to accept uncertainty. It replays because it won't accept the past. It worries because it won't allow the future to be unknown. Non-resistance breaks the loop at its root. Instead of asking, "How do I fix this mentally?" you ask, "Can I stop arguing with what already exists?" Often, that is enough. 6. Cooperation does not mean compliance. This distinction matters. Cooperating with existence does not mean saying yes to everything. It means saying yes to the fact that it exists. From that clarity, you can still say no. You can still set boundaries. You can still change direction. You can still act decisively. But action no longer comes from inner friction. It comes from alignment. 7. What alignment feels like. Alignment feels quieter than motivation. There is less urgency, less inner commentary, less emotional noise. You are not pushing life forward. You are responding to it intelligently. This is why non-resistant people often appear calm, even when they are highly effective. Their energy is not divided. 8. A final reflection for this part. Ask yourself this today. Where am I fighting something that is already here? Not externally, internally. A feeling, a delay, a limitation, a reality. And then ask, what happens if I stop resisting it? Just for now. You don't have to like the answer. You just have to allow it. What comes next? In the final part, we'll bring everything together. How non-resistance creates lasting inner peace. Why peace is a byproduct, not a goal. How to live this practice without turning it into another struggle. There is one last misunderstanding that keeps people stuck. They try to achieve peace. They chase it. They optimize for it. They turn it into another project. But peace does not respond to effort. It responds to the absence of inner opposition. 1. Why chasing peace creates more tension. When peace becomes a goal, the mind subtly says, I am not at peace now. I need to get somewhere else. This moment is insufficient. That is resistance again, just in a refined form. Peace is not something added to life. It is what remains when resistance is removed. This is why so many people feel calm only briefly and then lose it again. They are trying to hold peace instead of removing what disturbs it. 2. Non-resistance is a continuous orientation. Non-resistance is not a permanent state. It is a practice, a returning, a remembering. Resistance will still arise. You will still tense. You will still react. You will still forget. The difference is not perfection. The difference is awareness. When resistance appears, you notice it sooner. You release it faster. You don't build a story around it. This is mastery, not control. 3. What a peaceful mind actually looks like. A peaceful mind is not empty. It is not passive. It is not detached from life. It is undivided. Thoughts arise and pass. Emotions move through. Events happen. But there is no inner war, no constant judgment, no self-aggression, no demand that reality be different. This is what the Stoics called inner stability. This is what Buddhism calls equanimity. Different languages, same realization. 4. Living without inner opposition. When non-resistance becomes natural, life changes quietly. You stop dramatizing inconvenience. You stop personalizing randomness. You stop fighting your own emotional states. You still care. You still act. You still pursue what matters. But you do it without the background tension that once drained you. Life feels simpler, not because it is, but because you are no longer complicating it internally. 5. The most important insight of all. Here is the essence of everything you've heard. Reality does not require your agreement. It only requires your cooperation. The moment you stop resisting what already is, you reclaim your energy. And with that energy, you live more clearly, more effectively, and more peacefully. Not because life becomes easier, but because you stop fighting it. 6. A final practice. Today, notice just one moment of resistance. A thought, a feeling, a delay, a discomfort. And instead of fixing it, judging it, or explaining it, simply say, "This is here." That single sentence is not passive. It is powerful, because it ends the inner argument. Closing thought. Peace is not found by escaping life. It is found by meeting life without inner resistance. And that, more than any technique, is the ancient secret of a peaceful mind.